Hello, my name is John Burris, and welcome to the short video called Aging Does Not Cause Stiffness. In this video, I'll be exploring new possibilities for us, showing you some of the myths in our anatomy training, and showing you some of the myths in our exercise training. And even though the video is called Aging Does Not Cause Stiffness, the subtitle could probably be, well, actually stiffness causes aging. The stiffer you become, the quicker you'll age. We're exploring the anatomy of the body and showing you how most people are causing their own aging because they're doing mostly the wrong things as they age. So I'll be exploring new possibilities for you and giving you hope to live a pain-free, open, expansive life in your aging process. So let me refresh your memory if you haven't watched any of my videos yet about my background. I'm a body-mind therapist, massage therapist, fascia body worker, yoga teacher, yoga therapist, movement educator, author, lecturer, and I'll put that all together and I'll be sharing with you some new ideas about my nearly 40 years experience in this field and creating new ideas and watching how perhaps we're doing the wrong things and we're being led by the wrong people, the wrong institutions, and creating many mythologies about how we are. I've created something called New Anatomy based on what I follow natural principles. Most people are following old anatomy, which is based on hundreds and thousands of years old ideas that aren't really true. And so I'll be sharing you some of the differences here. So a little bit briefly about my exercise history. The first 35 years of my life, I was very engaged in sport and football, basketball, baseball, tennis, racquetball, cycling, everything. And weightlifting, I lifted weights 5-6 days a week, and I was tired, old, stiff, painful. My body felt like a cripple. And then the next 30 years or so, I joined the yoga world, and my body's been repaired, and I repaired most of my injuries. I'm not stiff. I can have total freedom of motion, and I feel completely healthy in my body, only because I changed directions. And I don't feel like an old person because I worked on flexibility and worked on getting out of the old warrior model of exercising. So those are some of the things I'm going to share with you today. So let's first talk about aging. We'll first compare it to a building. A building will age, for example, with weather, wind, rain, temperature changes. You'll see that paint starts to fade, a roof starts to deteriorate. You might have to repaint a building after 30 years or change the roof. Well, our bodies do age, but most of us are aging poorly because we're doing the wrong things. And the current trend is to teach people to do the wrong things as they age, so they're aging poorly. And that's because of the current trends in the media, medical doctors, sports facilitators. They're all teaching people the wrong things about how to be well, in my opinion. And I'm a perfect example of what people should be doing and what not to be doing. I've also worked on thousands of different clients over the years in my bodywork practice and watched thousands of students in my yoga teaching. And I can guarantee you the people who are the most fit, the hardest bodies, aren't necessarily the healthiest. They're some of the worst bodies I work on because hardness is not health. Hardness is dead, dried out tissue. So most people are aging poorly because they're drying themselves out and their tissues are dying. We often have this societal credo that says, oh, I'm just old, that's the way I'm supposed to feel. We're taught to expect to feel crappy when we get old. That's what they're teaching us. And I'm saying you don't have to feel that way if you do enough of the right things. There's also this motto in the medical world, oh, it's age-related. Oh, your knees got blah, blah, blah disease and this and the condition because you're age-related. Well, that's another bunch of BS because it's not true. It's what you're doing as you age that causes most of your health issues. And most people are doing the wrong things as they age, and they're blaming it on their calendar days. It's not how many calendar days you've collected in your life that's causing your problems. It's what you're doing or not doing during that time that's causing your problems. So when we stop blaming calendar days or aging for our problems, then we get out of the victim mode. Right now, most people are victims of their own bodies, blaming calendar days for how they feel. And it's not true. It's what they've been doing or not doing during the time that's causing their problems. So basically, how do people become stiff? Well, they dry out. they dry out. And there's lots of reasons for that. I'll share with you some of those reasons in a bit. But basically their body's dehydrating, they're drying out, their tissues are fusing together, their joints are compressing, they've got imbalances, they have injuries that are never correctly taken care of. They're compensating through sports training and fitness, and they're just gluing themselves together. So after a while, you know, that glue dries and you're stiff, you're old, you're tight. And it doesn't have to happen, because I've seen yoga teachers in their 90s doing stuff that amazes me, going, they're not stiff and tight. They've been practicing yoga for decades and they're not stiff and tight and in pain. Why is it all the weightlifters and the gym people are also stiff and tight and in pain with back problems and hip problems and knee problems? And I started to question that. So it's people are doing the wrong things, and that's causing their stiffness. And here's an example of the classic stiff hard body. A bag of rocks that don't move very well, glued together, fused together, and basically you're dense, you're glued together. So the classic concept that we're taught is, oh, we need to harden our bodies, we need to get muscle, big muscle mass and build muscle. And I believe that's a mistake, because you end up with a hard, dense body that's filled with rocks. I mean, look at the analogies we use. Abs of steel, rock solid chest muscles, biceps made of stone. The analogies by themselves would tell you there's something wrong here. We're trying to harden our bodies like a bag of rocks when you practice fitness and other types of things. And here's another example here. I call this a yoga body. It's a soft liquid body. What yoga and stretching and flexibility are trying to do is make our tissues softer, more lengthy and expansive. Doesn't mean you lose your strength at all. It just means you're trying to keep your body in a liquid state, which is completely different than the warrior fitness body. And this liquid body will age so much better than the hard rock filled body, and you won't have the stiffness, because you're trying to liquefy your tissues, lengthen your tissues, and stay warm in the tissues, so you don't get that stiffness you would get in the fitness body. And here's the two compared side to side. The rock hard, solid fitness body. We have to strengthen our core and harden our abs and harden our chest. That's the body that will stiffen over time, because the rocks don't move very well. They fuse together. Where on the other side is the yoga body that's liquid, soft, expansive, that moves very well, and it doesn't stiffen as you age. It's completely different. And so here's some really important distinctions here. Here's a bag of water. Here's a bag of rocks. Which one moves better? So the bag of rocks is like the fitness body, hard body. Glued together, nothing moves. It's all fused together. That's the current gym model, the fitness model, the Pilates model. Let's fuse our tissues together and they don't move. So here's the yoga model. Bag of water, it's flexible, it moves, it changes direction, it changes course. It's not stiff at all. The rock model, the fitness model, is stiff. The yoga model, if you practice this for years or decades, moves, it's flexible. You don't have the pain, the fused together tissues. So here's the two choices we have. Either a rock model, which is a fused together warrior gym workout, or the yoga model, which is lengthen, open, expand, and warm your tissues up, which causes everything to move and be flexible, and you don't end up with the stiffness you would end up in the other model. And here's a really important part to consider when it talks about stiffness and aging. As most people age, it's not necessarily their muscle tissue, but their fascia dries out, shrinks, and fuses together like beef jerky. So what is fascia? Well, the way I like to describe it is you peel apart an orange. And the orange part where the juice is, that'd be the muscle tissue. And the white part is the fascia tissues, all the fibers that wrap around. It's not just the sections, but all those little tiny segments too would be wrapped around membranes and fascia. So that would be the same in our body. It's all the membranes that surround the muscles. Most people are doing the wrong things that causes their fascia to dry out, to shrink, and to fuse together, and so they become stiff as they get older. So let me demonstrate how it all works. This is a fascinating way to envision the muscle fascia stiffness connection. So here's the bone. This is the bone. And around the bone is fascia. It's called a periosteum. It's the outer layer of the bone. And it's continuous with the fascia that pulls on the bone. So muscles don't attach to bone, fascia attaches to the bone. And the fascia is wrapped in muscle tissue. So bone over here, fascia tissue, periosteum, and the fascia is continuous. So here's a tendon. These fibers here are a tendon. And the tendon creates more strength, more collagen, so that it doesn't pull away from the bone. So you have some strength here. So tendons don't necessarily move by themselves, they're being pulled along. But they're embedded in the fascia. The fascia surrounds and embeds the entire tendon. But the fascia continues. And these are the muscle fibers called myofibrils. These are the fibers that cause you to lift your arm and let it drop. Lift your arm. So here's the muscle fibers. The fascia embeds it all. It surrounds the outside. It goes through it like a honeycomb. So the fibers are embedded in fascia. When the muscle fibers contract, it pulls the fascia to contract. Fascia can't move by itself. It's moved along by the muscle fibers. So if your muscle fibers are always in contraction for many reasons, the fascia will always be in contraction. And what that does is it causes the fascia to shrink, to dry out, and to fuse together. And that's how most people age. They dry out and they fuse together because their muscles are too tight. And their fascia becomes dried out and it shrinks. And then you get these withered old people who lost inches in their life and they can't move and their joints hurt because their fascia is shrunken because their muscles won't let go. So here's how muscles work. If I want to lift my arm, the muscles contract, and when they relax, the arm comes down. So the muscle fibers have an on and off switch. Contraction is on. When they contract, it relaxes, it drops and comes back down. So what happens is this. Not all muscle fibers contract at the same time. They rotate. So that creates tone in the body. So if you wanted to do a load lifting, like you want to backpack in a mountain area and you have 100 pounds on your back, more fibers have to contract more frequently to carry that load. And at a certain point, they may not get the glucose or the energy they need, so they exhaust, so they don't have it. So, but when more fibers are contracting more often, you have the fascia that doesn't have a chance to let go and stretch, and now you have contracted, withered, dried out beef jerky fascia because your muscles are always in a state of contraction. So the common practice that most people do when they try to harden their body through weight training and fitness conditioning, your muscles are always in a state of contraction, causing the fascia to shrink and to dry out and to fuse together. So that's a big reason why people age poorly, because they're dried out and shrunken because their fascia is not healthy at all. So what causes the fascia to dry out and to shrink, causing most people's stiffness? Well, there's several reasons for that, and so I'll talk about that now. Anytime muscles shrink, they cause fascia to shrink. So there's several ways that muscles will shrink. So one is stress. Stress, another word for stress is fear. If you're always in a fear response, a fight or flight reaction, one of the things that happen is your muscles tighten. That's why your neck gets tightened when you're stressed out. That's why your back hurts when you're stressed out, because your muscles shrink and tighten. The more frequently you're in a stress response, the more your muscles tighten and shrink, causing the fascia to shrink. So what I notice, for example, people around the world who live in stressful situations, they look old at 35 or 40 because they're always afraid of survival. And so they might be 35, 40, but they look 70 or 80 because they're always squinting and pulling in because they're in stress all the time. Even in our Western cultures, we do the same thing. We're always tight and stressed out because our fibers are shrinking. So another thing that happens is lack of mobility. Fascia needs movement and liquidity to stay healthy. It's basically a water-based material. And when you stop moving, everything starts to harden and freeze up and dry out. It's like the reservoir dried out. So lack of movement is a really vital part of what happens in our body. And your fascia dries out. Another thing that happens is called repression. When you use your muscles to hold back emotion, then your fascia dries out as well. So instead of, if you live a stoic life or you're afraid to express yourself, you're going to squint and hold yourself in because you're not really free to express yourself. The more you shrink, the more your fascia shrinks with you, the quicker you'll age. So in the body-mind world, sometimes you can read somebody's mind by reading their body. If they're shrunken and whole over, you're probably thinking, well, they probably don't feel good about expressing themselves because they're holding on. So that's called repression. Also, there's unattended to injuries. Most people, especially athletes, don't do a very good job of attending to their injuries. So they have ankle injuries from high school or knee problems or back problems, and they cover them up with, in my opinion, the wrong types of treatments. And when you cover up your injuries rather than take care of them, your fascia shrinks and hardens and glues together. One of the most common areas I work on in people is either a frozen shoulder. People can't move their shoulder because everything's frozen together. In most cases, they've been doing the wrong things most of their life. Or ankles that are fused together from old sprained ankles they've never taken care of. So when you do that and have injuries that have never been taken care of, you glue together and fuse together and you start feeling old and stiff because your fascia is hardened. So another way is through a labor-intensive life or labor-intensive job. When you're using your arms for work and whatnot, and you're not stretching afterwards, your body is fusing together because you're using your body and your muscles, and your fascia is shrinking. And the last way, as I've spoken about before, is gym work and fitness training. Over time will dry you out, tighten you, and shrink you. My clients who are athletes are some of the worst bodies I work on because they're dried out, they're shrunken, and they're hardened because that's what they've been told to do their whole life, is to harden their body. A hard body is not a healthy body. A hard body is a dried out, shrunken, fused together body. Now, there's many good parts of fitness if you want to lose weight or focus or be disciplined or you are training for a sport or backpacking. Unfortunately, most people don't do enough stretching to counteract the effects. For example, if you go to the gym, most people lift the weights 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week. Ask them to stretch, they'll go, not really. Okay, so most of their life is spent contracting. They're throwing weights around. They're contracting, but they're not expanding. We live in a muscle culture. It's a muscle industrial complex. There's all kinds of industries associated with build muscle, get strong, get hard, from the modeling industry to the nutrition industry to gyms, health clubs, selling magazines and television shows. It's all on the muscle industrial complex, and it's causing our bodies to age quicker because we're not doing enough to counteract the effects of the fitness gym workouts. So here's what happens to people. As you get harder and stiffer and tighter, it's harder to move. So people stop doing fun things. They stop going for walks, stop walking on the beach, they stop playing golf. They stop playing tennis or pickleball because it hurts too much to move. And guess what happens? They start this spiral of more tightness, more stiffness, and more hardness because they're now at this point where it hurts to move. Part of my experience, by the time I left high school, I was a cripple. Knee problems, hip problems, back problems, pinched nerves. And it was debilitating. But I kept lifting weights and pounding away. And the more I did that, the worse it got. And until I started the healing journey of body work, massage, yoga, and unraveling this tension in my body, it didn't get better until I got on that journey. So most people spend their life contracting, and then it starts to harden, and then the harder they get, the stiffer they get, and they call it aging. So where do we go from here? What needs to change? So if I was in charge of things, there's ways you can change this. And so first of all, people need to understand the importance of their fascia. It's more important than your muscle tissue. I know that sounds crazy. we need to be cognizant of how important fascia is. It needs to stay liquid, soft, and expansive for you to be healthy and not stiff as you get older. So I would start early on in grade school and high school and teach kids yoga. And I know there's some controversy about that. Some parents don't want that. But if I taught more flexibility work for kids, they would have a better life as they age. They develop new skills. They develop all kinds of new body awarenesses that they don't get from weight training and fitness practices. So right now, and currently in most high school, college, even professional teams, they have a strength and conditioning coach. So they have 50-50. So they lift weights and they condition their heart and body through aerobic exercises and sprints and running. And so that's what goes on. But there's almost zero flexibility training, almost zero. So what I would like to see is a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. If we added a yoga teacher or a flexibility trainer onto the mix, so you would do 1/3 of your work would be cardio, 1/3 is strength training, 1/3 would be flexibility. So what happens is a hard body in competition will break because your fascia is so tight when you're in a stressful position, you're moving quickly or you're getting tackled, your fascia snaps. But when you're flexible and your fascia is liquid, you don't snap, you bend, you fold. The tissue doesn't break because flexibility creates a liquid body that handles sports competition much better. You would avoid most of those injuries. And on another scale, why don't we just do 50% of what we do is yoga and then the other percent, whatever you're doing, tennis or football or basketball or baseball. And the most extreme is, why don't we just do yoga and not have all these sports that destroy our body and hardness and tightness and stiffness as we age? So there's lots of ways to get there. Depends on your priorities. And so we need to shift our awareness of our human body, and we're not a war machine, but we're being taught to go to war in our bodies. And that's why most people feel hard and stiff as they age, because they've dried out and they've fused themselves together mostly by what they've been doing themselves. So in order to change a lot of this mentality, we've got to remove our resistance. A lot of coaches don't want to spend time flexibility training. That we could be spending time on hitting each other or baseball practice or skill training. Well, we need to make flexibility important, because especially when you finish your sport, what most people do, they still keep lifting weights. They still go to the gym and harden, even though now they're debilitated, because that's all they know how to do. So we need to change our mentality. There's so many layers of resistance. When I used to teach yoga a lot, especially for men, I get this, well, I'm a male, I can never be flexible. It's only for girls or women. I go, that's ridiculous. I've been practicing yoga for many years and I'm more flexible than most people I know. So a lot of our resistance is in our head. Or I can never get there. Why should I even start? Or it hurts too much. Well, that means you're trying too hard. So there's lots of training in our mind that needs to change first to adapt a new policy, a new way of living, that knowing as we get older, why are we creating things that are making us stiffer and harder? Why don't we start from the very beginning and start to change that? So the body revolution is here. I'm a classic example. I completely changed my life by becoming flexible and open and making my fascia important. So you can too. Becoming aware means knowledge and changing the direction you're going in. And stop blaming, stop being a victim of your body, and stop blaming calendar days for why you feel bad, why your knees hurt, why your ankles hurt, why your shoulders hurt. In most cases, you're the one who created that. So change directions. If I can do it, so can you. So this body revolution is upon us, and I encourage you to take some important information with you and make some really important changes in your life. Thank you for watching. I love talking about this. I'm really happy that you were able to visit this video with me. If you'd like to learn more about me, please visit my website at johnburris.com, and you can subscribe to this channel for more leading edge videos to come. Thank you.